Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm to Commissioners Connection. My name is John O'Grady. I am the president of the board of Franklin County Commissioners. When we started these conversations online in April, there were just a few COVID-19 cases in Ohio. Now we've got over 155,000 cases. Important opportunity to let you know what's happening here in the community. We decided that we thought these would be a good source of information and the resources that might be available for all of our struggling neighbors here in Franklin County. So we began these conversations back then. Today, my guests are Amy Taylor, the Chief Operating Officer of Columbus Downtown Development Corporation, Lieutenant General Michael Ferriter, retired general, President and CEO of the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and Dr. Frederic Bertley, the President and CEO of the Center of Science and Industry, or COSI, as we all know it here. So we're going to have a great conversation today and a discussion about what's going on the Scioto Peninsula. So you can submit your questions in the chat box on Facebook Live, and we're going to go ahead. We have staff that will retrieve those questions and forward them to us while we're having this conversation. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started. So Amy, if you could, we'll start with you. If you could tell us about how did the fantastic Veterans Memorial Museum come about? I know General Ferriter is with us, but you've been with this project from its inception, and the Downtown Development Corporation is responsible for so many projects downtown, and so I know that you were with us. So if you could describe to us how did the NVMM come about?
Absolutely. Well, Commissioner, this will sound very familiar to you because you and your fellow commissioners were right there with us. It came about when we had a conversation with you and your fellow commissioners to figure out how we could use that site better. And we worked with Senator John Glenn, who put together a Veterans Advisory Committee. It was made up of veterans from every conflict from World War II to the present, as well as peacetime veterans, and also people who from every branch of service. And we said, let's just dream. What could this building be? What would we need here? And it was interesting because while there was a facility there titled Veterans Memorial, it really didn't memorialize veterans. And it was built in the 50s, and like a lot of civic projects at that time, it was built and named after our greatest generation, but it was a convention center. And then we've got a new convention center, and that new convention center got an addition on it. And all of a sudden it wasn't up to code. It wasn't really doing what it should be doing for the community. And yet it was a prime site. And so we put together this committee, and we worked with you and your fellow commissioners and said, what could this be? And it was really interesting because although it was called Veterans Memorial, that convention center did not memorialize veterans, and it didn't celebrate that service and honor that sacrifice. And we thought, this is our chance to build something. So if you remember, we actually started as an Ohio Veterans Memorial and Museum. And we were talking about it and doing focus groups with hundreds of veterans. And I'll never forget this. Someone came to that focus group, and we kept saying, now you represent the state of Ohio, and as an Ohio veteran, how did it make you feel? And as a Buckeye, and this guy just stopped me and he said, ma'am, I do not represent the state of Ohio. I'm a veteran of the United States of America. And we realized that we had part of the story, but not the whole story. So we researched and found out that there was no national memorial or museum that celebrated the service of veterans in its entirety. There were military branch museums. There were museums to celebrate a specific conflict or to honor a specific conflict or war. And so we realized that we needed to think bigger. And I have to say, we were so fortunate that the commissioners and the governor recognized that and still continue to support an expanded program. Senator Glenn was on board, our funders were on board, and it went from a state memorial museum to a national one. And we brought in a nationally recognized architect. Senator Glenn chaired these committee meetings, and I'll never forget, these architects came in from New York and Portland, and they wanted to talk to the veterans, and Senator Glenn just looked at them and said, you need to understand what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to do something that hasn't been done before, and that people need to feel like they've arrived somewhere special. So it began with the architecture. And the architecture is phenomenal. I always joke that every gray hair I have is from when we took down the forms and the concrete had to stand by itself because it had no counterpoints. It's an interesting and unidentifiable shape. And I think we did our job. I think when you arrive there, you know you're somewhere sacred. You're somewhere that's important. 28 million pounds of concrete go in there. And when you're walking around, you don't see any load-bearing columns because there is support within the foundation. And I always thought that was very symbolic because that's the support of our veterans themselves. So we went out, we raised $82 million. The Columbus Downtown Development Corporation was proud to be able to do that. We hired an architect out of New York and Portland. We hired the best exhibit designer in the world, Ralph Applebaum and Associates. We hired an amazing Laurie Olin who did our landscape architecture, and it's a 50,000 square foot museum, and it really does tell the story of veterans, both through a timeline, that chronology, but also we filmed veterans from all across the country, and we went through that process with them, what it was like to serve, why they serve, where they serve, combat, coming home, and each of their stories tells a bit about themselves, but they were universal enough that we felt they could represent the story of veterans. Now, in no way does this represent everyone's story. It's an iterative process, and the general and his team have continued to make that process relevant. But we were privileged to be able to work with such a top tier, and I think our veterans deserve no less. And Senator Glenn, he wasn't able to see the final product, but he did see it once the shoring was off, and he could see the shape of the building. And I always joke that I think he'd be really proud of everything except the exhibit for him, because as you know, Commissioner, I know you're very close to him and his family. He was very humble, and that would have been the one thing I think he would have wished that he didn't have to have in there, but we couldn't let it go without him. True American hero.
No, they only made one John Glenn.
Yeah.
They made one John Glenn, that's for sure. Well, you know, before we move on to Dr. Bertley, you know, it was an honor to be able to be a part of it. It was not an easy process. You know, when we had to go through that process, there were a lot of veterans who were obviously and they were upset, and rightfully so at the time. We kept saying to them, you need to be patient. You need to understand. You need to have a vision. You need to trust us. You need to trust Senator Glenn. You need to trust you know, the folks who have a vision for this, and they were not happy, and we went through a lot through that whole process. But I'll tell you what, many of them came up to us the day we opened cut the ribbon and opened the museum. I had one gentleman come up to me in particular, and he said, you know, I was the biggest pain in your rear end, we'll say, through this whole process. And he gave me a hug, and he said, I just want to say thank you for putting up with me, because this is way beyond what we ever thought it could have been. And so if you haven't been to the memorial and museum, it's time. Well, the time's coming. You need to get back down there. And when we get to General Ferriter here in a minute, he'll let you know that the museum's open. I was just there. I was there on 9/11 with General Ferriter, and I've been there several times over the last few years. I've been there several times, many times. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And I went there with some of the veterans in my family the first time. Well, I went there the first time on the tour that Amy and CDDC provided, but then I also went there with several of the veterans in my family, and it's just a wonderful place. So Dr. Bertley, let's go to you for a second here. COSI has a fantastic history as well. It started back in 1964 in an old county building. Tell us a little bit about the history of COSI.
Yeah, so first of all, Commissioner Grady, thank you so much for having me part of this program, to be honest, Ms. Taylor and General Ferriter. It's so funny how we're having this conversation. We're talking about memorial, and you're talking about how connected these institutions are. So you mentioned we started in 1974 in a Franklin County building. It was on Broad Street across the original Wendy's, if you remember where that was. What's amazing is that building was called Memorial Hall, and Amy and General Ferriter, that was actually the first Veterans Memorial in Franklin County before it was where the current one was. And what's amazing is now we are both together back on the peninsula. But to your point, March, I can tell you, it was March 29th, 1964, COSI was born. For 25 cents if you were a kid and 50 cents if you're an adult, you can walk into this treasure trove of hands-on science experiences like you've never experienced before. And it's interesting because we have Battelle here, the #1 research, private research nonprofit organization in the world. It's right here in our backyard. Of course, we have the great OSU and other universities, but you can't walk into those buildings to find out what's happening with hands-on science and the cutting edge, but you could come to this place called COSI. And on that first day, they had 5,000 visitors at COSI doing all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, they went across the street to get their favorite cheeseburger from Wendy's. All right, since then, we then moved to the peninsula, and even that is an amazing experience. And I do want to give a shout out to Paula Spence, who passed away last week. She was instrumental in working with the titans of this area, the Wolves, the Wexners, the you name it, were the people who fundraised $125 million under her leadership to build this building that I'm currently sitting in called the new COSI, if you will. We opened our building in November of 1999. And we went from about 100,000 square feet, but because we were so popular in 1964 through 1999, we needed to expand. Now we have 320,000 square feet. And Amy really talked about, as they built the National Vets Memorial Museum, how they had the best of the best, including the world's best exhibit designer, Ralph Applebaum. Well, the folks who built this new building, COSI, which wrapped its arms around the old Central High, an iconic building at the peninsula's apex, they hired the world's best architect at the time, Arata Isazaki, a Japanese individual who, by the way, folks, 2 years ago won the Pritzker Prize for Architecture. That is equivalent to the Nobel Prize for Architecture. And why is this symbolic? He won it for his over 110 building collection around the world. Only 4 buildings he built in the United States, and one of them is right here in Ohio, right here in Franklin County, right on the peninsula. And so what a great story we have together. And then, of course, as you know, in February of 2020, COSI, your beloved hands-on science center from Central Ohio, was rated the #1 science museum in the nation by USA Today. And so with that, Commissioner O'Grady, rich history to a current amazing past, with the exception that we're closed, but we'll talk about that later because we are opening soon.
Well, and then the next coincidence, or the next thing that ties the two facilities together, the Memorial Museum and COSI, is the plaques, the giant plaques that were in the old Veterans Memorial at the auditorium. Those gigantic plaques, when we took those down, before we tore down the old building, we put them into storage. Well, just last year, late last year, before the pandemic hit, we had them reconditioned, and then we had them installed at Memorial Hall. So we have a new display at Memorial Hall honoring all of the veterans of Franklin County at Memorial Hall, right outside the Veterans Service Commission, which is on the first floor of Memorial Hall, and it's beautiful. We just dedicated it late last year, about this time last year, at Memorial Hall, 280 East Broad Street. So if you have any occasion to be at 280 East Broad Street at Memorial Hall, it's a fantastic display that you should go see. So it's just another symbiotic relationship between Veterans Memorial Museum and COSI. So anyway, General Ferriter and Dr. Bertley, so how have both of your organizations handled the pandemic and the various closings and all of the precautions that we all have to take these days between distancing and mask wearing and all the cleaning and all the different things that we all have to do? Let's start with General Ferriter, but since we haven't gone to him yet, but due to the pandemic, and I know you guys are doing a great job, Dr. or General Ferriter, because I was just there. But so talk about the pandemic and all the things that you guys have had to do based on that.
Sure, Commissioner. Thanks for having us together, and it's great to see you, at least over the internet, if not in person. And great to see Dr. Bertley and Miss Amy Taylor again, and everyone out there. Behind me is a little flag that says "Reject their rejection," and that's sort of a way of life. On about the 9th of March, when we realized we may need to shut the front doors to guests walking in, we decided to reject the thought that we'd be closed and instead pivot and place all of our programming in online and virtual ways. And so since then, we started we started Rally Point, which is the first Saturday of each month. We started it after October 27th, 2018, with every first Saturday except for New Year's, to bring veterans in here, feed them a brunch, make sure they're not living in a car, make sure they have jobs, and that they're connected to Franklin County Services, Veteran Services, to the VA, to the Department of Labor. Just make sure they're okay, because we know when veterans are connected, and we know that the issues of depression and alcohol and other problems go away, to include suicide. So we were getting about 100 a month, and then we went virtual. And so now we're getting 3,500 to 7,000 for each event. During the pandemic, we've had more than about 20,000 views from our 17 plus events. On Friday last week, the 18th of September, we interviewed Sergeant Major Thomas Payne, Medal of Honor recipient. He received the Medal of Honor on the 11th of September, and just 7 days later, the National Veterans Memorial Museum has the stature that his first interview came to Ohio. So we viewed this in many ways like 2023 showed up and we weren't ready. And so all the things we probably would have had built out in our first 4 years, we just reached forward, grabbed them, and said, now, virtual classrooms. And I know Frederic will discuss reaching to the students as well. So instead of yellow buses, which was my big goal this time of year to increase the number and get the foot traffic of kids, well, now we're bringing virtual classrooms, the same field trip, only it's going to the Zoom sessions, the virtual rally points. We're building out the Vetrepreneur store so that these veterans that were on some OP somewhere and said, hey, if we get through this alive, let's start that belt company or that beer company or that clothing company. We've had amazing veteran voices as well. On June 27th, we opened back the front doors. I talked to Brian Ross about, to me, it seems like they're tea times. And he said, well, they're actually called pods in your business general. And so these families that are hanging out together in the neighborhood, and as you said on Saturday, I'm watching the soccer game or the softball game, they're comfortable together. So now they're coming in those groups because that reference group is already considered a healthy group by the moms and dads and the Cub Scout and Girl Scout leaders. So we're having the foot traffic return. And then the final thing that we did is in this world of Don't Slow Down, we reached out to Mary White. You can see her book right there, the We the People. Stunning exhibit of 50 portraits, watercolor, that we have in the Grand Hall right now. A veteran from each state. I spoke with her in Charleston today, and this grabs you in the same way that our alcoves grabs you. And so we'll tell everyone we're clean as a whistle. We've got the spacing that'll make you comfortable, and we have even additional exhibits. So we're open and strong, and I would add to my brother Frederic, he's open as well, just in a different way that we're reaching and impacting lives, each of us right here on the peninsula. And with that, I'll pause and pass back to you, Commissioner, or to Frederic.
Frederic, you guys aren't quite open yet, but you're preparing to be open. We're going to get to that here in a little bit. Let me interject here a couple of things. We've got several people that have indicated they're watching us on Facebook Live. A lot of folks like to jump on and make sure that we know about them. Some of them are Hope and Ebony and Robin and Suzanne have indicated that they're on watching. But we have a question from Kevin. Kevin wants to know if vets can get into the Veterans Memorial Museum for free.
Kevin, the answer is yes. You are free. Please come along and see what you have. We're seeing associations and reunions coming back. And so absolutely, Kevin, you are free.
And can I just add that veterans have been free since day one. We were really, that was really important to the project team and to General Ferriter that we allow veterans to come in and see this and hopefully have that engagement. General Ferriter has 100 stories, but the one story I had is when we walked through with someone and a guy told me how after his father passed away, he found a Bronze Star in his drawer, and he never knew his father got a Bronze Star. And he said, why wouldn't my dad talk to me about this? And what he realized is, having gone through the museum, if he had been able to take his dad through the museum, it would provide that framework to start the discussion. And General Ferriter and his team have really hit that out of the ballpark. And I'm so glad Kevin asked this question, because I still get asked the question. And General Ferriter's team has done such a great job to make sure that word gets out there. But every chance we get, veterans are free, and they're free to park too, right, General?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. And there's still more and more people telling us that they're watching, so that's great. We appreciate that. So both of these centers, both the Veterans Memorial Museum and COSI, are both located on the peninsula. And every great development has to have, I believe, should have or has to have great cultural amenities as part of that, as part of the development. So we have a brand new announcement, a brand new development coming to the peninsula that in my estimation will be anchored by both of these great cultural amenities. Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the new development that's been announced, and then I'd like to hear from both General Ferriter and Dr. Bertley their thoughts and their excitement about the development that's going to be joining them there at the peninsula.
Well, you're absolutely right, Commissioner. We've been working towards the peninsula development since 2012, and that's when we started the Veterans Memorial. 2013, we started the riverfront, the Scioto Greenways. We worked with COSI to bring the American Museum of Natural History into COSI, to turn their parking lots that were a gray field into a green park, Dorian Green, a city managed park. And when all of this started to happen, it was setting the stage for private development. And the peninsula was officially, we broke ground on this new mixed-use neighborhood. It's 26 acres, and we're going to start right in the center, right across from COSI and Dorian Green Park. And one of the things that I think makes it unique is this great view back to our central business district, which you can't get when you're in the central business district. But certainly a second really important part is that it's anchored by these cultural institutions. And so the peninsula didn't just come about because we all thought about it. It's been a methodical strategic plan, anchored with our elected officials, with our community leaders. And we broke ground, and there's a 240,000 square foot office building that Daimler is building. There's almost a 200 key hotel from Rockbridge, and 330 residential units from Flaherty and Collins. And again, that's just the beginning. There's a bold vision that the mayor has for this neighborhood, and it certainly is made special because it gets to be around these two nationally ranked. Dr. Bertley talked about COSI. Obviously, the National Veterans Memorial Museum also received national and international accreditation. And so that's really special, and you can live right by it and oversee it and really be part of that community.
General Ferriter, Dr. Bertley, talk to us about what you think, what this new development means to you and to your facilities.
Go ahead, General Ferriter. I'll follow you.
Oh,
Into battle, and after this.
There we go. Well, first of all, it's just the obvious and natural progression. I'm able to say that I arrived here on June 14th, 2018, and Miss Amy Taylor walked me around town. I was getting about 12 miles a day, meeting everybody and getting ready for our opening.
I remember.
But what I felt immediately was the warmth and friendliness of Columbus, and having lived in the military and moved a number of times as a military brat and as a soldier. I've been a lot of places, but no place as friendly as Columbus, Ohio. And so now you extend that footprint, and that's going to bring, really Mark Center sector is somewhere in the middle of the river, and the balance achieved by the peninsula and the activity and that same vibe and buzz now brings all of those folks over quite naturally. And then after a great day of conventions or of activities or even work in their office, great place to relax, link up at COSI or at the National Veterans Memorial Museum. And then word of mouth marketing is the best in the world for guys like us. And as they see it and feel it, just as you did, Commissioner, then they tell someone else. And that allows the purpose to be accomplished, which is really to honor and connect and inspire and educate, and to take these young Americans and introduce them to science and STEM on Dr. Bertley's side of the Broad Street as well. And Frederic, over to you.
Thank you, General Ferriter. To piggyback on your words, every great city on this planet has iconic spaces. That's what makes these places special. New York City's got its Central Park. Chicago has its Magnificent Mile. Boston has the Boston Commons. Paris has Champs-Élysées. You can go on and on, Hyde Park in London. Well, Columbus, and you said it, Columbus is a warm and endearing city. And now we have the peninsula. And every great landmass, every great public park, not only has great green space, which the peninsula has, it's also anchored by phenomenal entities that are going to bring people from in the city, from outside the city, to this local point. And that's what this is doing. And so, as General Ferriter said, and as I think, having two seminal nationally ranked institutions as cultural anchors for an incredible civic space that's going to have hotels, as Ms. Taylor said, that's going to have apartments, that's going to have retail all around this space with beautiful greenery and a Dorian Green Park and a beautiful waterway that CDDC fixed up years ago. I personally could not be happier to partner with General Ferriter as two leaders of a cultural institution that's going to benefit from this wealth of foot traffic. And it's not just about foot traffic, but it's really about connecting people by, there's good shops, there's good food, there's good places to sleep and hotels. My God, get your civility up by going to the National Memorials Museum. That's where you really understand how people made all this thing possible for our country. So couldn't be happier. It's on our front doors and our back doors. And it's just, thank you, Amy Taylor. Thank you, CDDC. Thank you, Commissioner O'Grady, for making all this happen.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, one thing that I think I'd be remiss not to mention is everything that we just talked about happened because of the Columbus Way, because of public-private partnerships. Every single aspect, from the restoration of the river and the Scioto Mile, to Dorian Green, to the National Veterans Memorial Museum, to COSI and AM&H and COSI. And so we're so fortunate that we have elected officials who step up and corporations who step up and understand that downtown, in order for it to be everybody's neighborhood, it has to be available to everyone. It has to be accessible to everyone. And we've got these great civic amenities that you can go to the Scioto Mile for free. And it's one of the best experiences that you can get anywhere. And I think it's important that we continue to remember and to remind people every chance we get that we're fortunate to live in a community that values public-private partnerships, and people put their money where their mouth is.
In 2017, when we hosted the National Association of Counties, 2,500 plus county commissioners from across the country here in Columbus, we were in the midst of the Scioto Mile, the Scioto Greenways expansion, redoing the river, and just, I think, at the very beginning of just digging the holes, basically, for the very beginning of the National Veterans Memorial Museum. And we did tours. Guy Worley and Amy did tours and explained to people what was going on and all of what was happening along the Scioto Mile, the Scioto Greenways with the river restoration and reclamation, and what was going on with the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and with trying to get all of them to understand what it was going to be like, and and people were just blown away by all the activity and all that was happening and what the future was going to be. and then people have been back since for other meetings that we've held, and they just couldn't believe all that we had going on here, and all that was planned for Central Ohio. They were just and they couldn't believe what Amy just described, the Columbus way, or the public-private partnerships. And so we have become known here in Central Ohio for PPP, for public-private partnerships, 3P, and it is people are amazed and jealous of what we do here in Central Ohio and how we stack hands to get things done when it's for the benefit of the entire community. There's a few questions that have come in. First, I should let you know that Suzanne, Elizabeth, April, Zach, and Joanne are all watching. They all wanted us to know. So when will the new development be finished and open?
Well, phase one, which I mentioned, is the office, hotel, and residential, the first office hotel, first hotel and first residential. Yeah. They'll be open 2 years from now. So we're looking for that summer 2022 groundbreaking. And it's the start. I mean, we're looking at a much bigger neighborhood development. And, you know, Commissioner, you mentioned it when I talk to colleagues across the country who work for organizations like the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation, they're envious that we have this peninsula. So it's a 56-acre peninsula, and there's 26 acres that's left to be built out in our downtown, facing our skyline. And we're not buying half-acre parcels. Between the city and the county and CDDC, all of this land is been put together and is under a master plan development. So in 2 years, we'll be able to start the fun, and it will continue to grow from there.
Yeah, no, it's a phased in approach, and it's going to take more than just you don't snap your fingers and make these things happen, but it's a phased in approach. But in 2 years is when the first pieces are going to open. So then Parker asks, what's the plan for the rest of of Franklinton? And while that's not necessarily Amy's, that's not necessarily her job title or her job description, the remainder of Franklinton, I'm sure that she does know about plenty of the other things that are going on. There's a lot happening in Franklinton. It's a very, it's one of the most happening, jumping places in Central Ohio right now. There's several developments that are going on there.
There are. So interestingly enough, and this matters more to me than it does to anyone else, but technically, regardless of what the media calls it, the peninsula is actually in downtown. Downtown's boundaries go to the railroad tracks. And the reason that's important is that's the entitlement process we go through. We go to the Downtown Commission. The Columbus Downtown Development Corporation can work on this project. And that, like I mentioned, has been a methodical, strategic approach that began with the riverfront, included all of the cultural amenities we just discussed, phase one with the office, residential, and hotel. And we envision this to be a much bigger, much broader built out when it's done. So really continuing with that strong office and employment center, but making it an 18 to 24-hour district. Now, the nice part about this is Franklinton exists right on the other side of those railroad tracks, and it has its own brand and energy, just like you mentioned, Commissioner. It's very exciting. And downtown has more of the corporate atmosphere, especially the central business district across the river. And the peninsula gets to, I think, take the best of both worlds and have it bleed into it. So it has to be neither as corporate as central business district, nor as avant-garde as Franklinton. It gets to get both of those. But the nice part is it was right now a lot of parking lots with two world-class cultural institutions. Once we create that neighborhood, you seamlessly will transition into all the excitement occurring in Franklinton. And if you haven't been down there, whether it's to Brewdog or Strongwater, they've got a great coffee shop at Brett Kaufman's project at Gravity. You're missing out because it's some of the most fun and most exciting things that are happening. It's happening in Franklinton.
Yeah, Franklinton's the up and coming place to be with lots going on. Very exciting place right now in Central Ohio. So Jake has asked a question that I think is one that I should probably take. He wants to know if the public can visit the plaques that are at Memorial Hall. And the answer to that, Jake, is absolutely. It's a public building. It is certainly open to the public. Don't forget to wear your mask. You will definitely be required. but it is open to the public during normal business hours from 8 to 5. And those you'll have to go through security like you would at any one of Franklin County's facilities. But once through security, they can direct you to those plaques, and they are it's a well done, very interesting memorial, and those plaques are well worth the trip if you're in the downtown area. So do those. We also have another question from Elizabeth. She wants to know whether this is a great one. This one takes me back a ways, Dr. Bertley. Elizabeth wants to know whether the yellow submarine is still at COSI, and also if they've considered doing a COVID or vaccine safety display.
Great question. I think it was Elizabeth who asked that.
Yes.
Great question, Elizabeth. A, yes, and B, yes. The yellow submarine a la Beatles is still right there in the new COSI. So when we open, which will be opening soon, you'll be able to check that out. And in terms of a display, we're going to do a combination of having a looped video that talks about the science of beating COVID and how to be clean, as well as some different hands-on demonstrations. The hands-on demonstrations are currently still being in development, but yes and yes, two great questions, and we're working on both of them. Well, the submarine's already there. We're working on the latter.
Okay. Yeah, no, I remember the old COSI from my childhood, obviously. And we would go on field trips there as a kid, and the family would go as well. But with a family of 12, it was always easier to go on a field trip than it was with my brothers and sisters. I got more special treatment on the field trip than I did with my brothers and sisters. But they were the yellow submarine was one of the treats of the trip when we would go. So so Amy already asked some of these questions, so I'm going to move on. But General Ferriter, you're not a Columbus native. So when you first got here, what did the peninsula look like and to you at the time? And what is it? Now that it's starting to take shape a little bit more, what's it looking like today? And what are you expecting? Is it here as it's starting to take shape, and as you look to the next few years?
Well, thanks, Commissioner. When I got the call to determine whether or not I was interested in this great job, I was in fact in Columbus. The problem, it was Columbus, Georgia. And so where I've spent many, many years at Fort Benning.
There's only one Columbus. There's only one.
And so I just needed to change the zip code. Well, when I arrived, we were putting the final touches. I view this, or describe this, speaking of submarines, as Amy and the team built an aircraft carrier, and they handed me the keys, and they said that that it's running, and all you have to do is hire the crew and train them up, because you're the only person we've hired. And at the time, just prior to Red, White, and Boom, my wife was moving one of our kids out to California, military family, in support. And so she flew in on 3 July and said that what a great city. They shot off fireworks for me. And I had to explain to her that that's a tradition called Red, White, and Boom. But what we have seen is the evolution of the city in 2 years. We continue to see the wisdom of those that built the Saddle Mile, because living in the Arena District, Margie and I walk, and we do get to see families from all demographics assembled there as sun sets. A peaceful setting that's COVID-free, that's spacey enough to allow them to do it and cost zero. And so the true beauty of the downtown and what a beautiful city can do is evident. And I watched the CrossFitters run up and down Frederic's stairs, and I've seen all the gym rats who've moved out of gyms are actually using the natural contours of the Saddle Mile for great workouts. The bicycle traffic has increased like crazy, and as is the running and walking, and old people walking and holding hands, such as Margie and I. In terms of the flow of the city, you can also feel the maturing and the comfort as that loop goes around and comes onto the peninsula side of it. And we're really looking forward as we hear and see the caterpillars across the street scraping the ground, and chain link fences are up, to bring that newness. And it's going to be a very natural connection to Franklinton as Gravity and those other places. And I've done my very best, Amy, to hit all of those pubs and coffee shops so that I'm well informed with all that's around me. But that friendly vibe that I saw on day one hasn't changed. And it almost, a few times people with masks, you got to tell them you can still smile at with a mask on as you walk past each other on the Saddle Mile. So a lot of goodness.
Well, I know my good friends down at Tommy's Diner are all excited about all the new developments.
They are.
So we've more and more people just keep jumping on, including folks like Daniel, Wade, and Rita are watching. So here's a question that came in. I'm not sure who from, but is the National Veterans Memorial Museum connected to the Smithsonian in any way?
We are through their veteran voices and Witness to War. One of the things that we want to be able to do. So we're not an affiliate. Let me be clear. We are in the American Museum Association and all that entails. We haven't rejected being a part of the Smithsonian series, but we are actually our own, originally a holdings company underneath the CDDC, and now our own 501c3, the National Veterans Memorial Museum here in Columbus. Our relationships in this world, I found out right away, this world being cultural and museum world, the camaraderie, the sharing, and the openness, and I'll help you. We've got the World War II Museum exhibit, the Bob Hope exhibit in-house. Frederic and his team have all but kept the training wheels on me and my team, little by little, assisting us to independently or confidently stand on our own. And then if you call another cultural, the answer is yes. And then the question is, what do you need? So our relationship with the Smithsonian is strong, especially since my daughter, Dr. Michael Ferriter, worked there up until last year. And so that made it even easier. And but whether it's the World War II Museum, COSI, in Dayton, the Museum of the U.S. Air Force, in Quantico at the National Infantry, you call, we fall. That's what paratroopers do. And with regard to relationships, yes. And then formal authorities, as needed. Over.
So, General, tell us a little bit about the Franklin County room at the museum. I've been there. I know about it, but tell our listeners and viewers what about it a little bit.
Well, there was, as you mentioned, there was quite an emotion to retain and honor the history of the past vets memorial, and it's more than. I got my law degree there, or I saw Britney Spears there, as I was told. But it was truly, it represented families and family lines. And so in your negotiations, to ensure that folks knew that in life you do go forward, but you can look in the rearview mirror and honor those of the past. And so with great insights and wisdom, it was decided before I arrived in town that 8 of the significant plaques, big stone engraved tributes, would remain in a room so designated as the Franklin County room. And they include, 3 plaques from the Civil War. They include a plaque that notes the beginning of the American Legion and the beginning of the Veterans of Foreign War. It highlights Women Auxiliary, which was pretty interesting because where you have these big veterans associations, behind the scenes in all of our lives is that great spouse who's carrying the weight when you're not present, or even often when you are. And so the auxiliaries code for the women who also were the descendants of the Civil War. And then as well as the Spanish-American War and actions in the Philippines and even San Juan Hill. So a great tribute to those. And then there's one that lists each of the counties and the numbers of Union soldiers who served, the numbers wounded from each county, as well as a tribute to the way that the great state of Ohio carried more than their fair share of the burden of the war between the states.
That's great. So, Dr. Bertley, And thank you, General. I appreciate that. Dr. Bertley, tell us about COSI Connects and Learning Lunchbox. Those are some programs that we're obviously very interested in.
Well, absolutely. And if you allow me, I'll share my screen to show you what this stuff looks like and whip through some slides for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So just please confirm that you guys can see my screen.
Right up. Great.
All right. All right. So, hey, sorry we're closed, but we will be opening soon. And I can't announce it, but the announcement's coming out in a few weeks as to when we're opening. We're very excited. But while we were closed, and I really appreciate what General Ferriter said, we don't consider ourselves closed. Physically, yes, our guests couldn't come into the building, but we've been so open in terms of all kinds of programs that we've been delivering on, including what you mentioned, Commissioner O'Grady. But we really leveraged what came out when this pandemic hit. And this is from a McKinsey study published in April. Almost 200 governments from April, and this is true moving forward to right now, almost 200 governments shut down their K through 12 schools in response to coronavirus. That impacted 1.6 billion people. And if you think about there being 7.7 billion people on the planet, half are adults. So now you're down to 3 million. And a big subset of those are like 18 to 22. So you're talking about almost every kid around the world was impacted from an education standpoint. This is what education looked like during the coronavirus. You were either glued to your screen, but you're stuck at home, right? And so we looked at what could COSI do to impact that. And so we looked at three spaces: digital, the digital, physical, and then we leveraged partners, especially Franklin County, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so the digital implementation is what you referenced, Commissioner Grady. We launched COSI Connects, which we called it a portal to a universe of science. All this free stuff correlated to the K through 12 space for teachers, parents who are struggling at home, all this free, great science content that was actually linked to the standards. Here's what the website looks like. We had great videos capturing all kinds of cool science stuff. We had podcasts, we had science challenges. We had an activity every single day that was supported by a video from one of our educators or scientists to show you, the teacher, the parent, or the kiddo, to how to get through that activity. And then, even though physically we're closed, 6 of our exhibits are 3D films. So you can go to the great AM&H gallery that Ms. Taylor referenced, the Dinosaur Gallery, and do a full 3D virtual tour of that exhibit. And you can click on certain things and expand to a wealth of knowledge on dinosaurs and paleontology, et cetera, et cetera. So this was COSI Connects, a digital portal to give access to kids. And then we actually created a free app you can download and get activities from everywhere from our website for free. Here's what the app looks like. So if you haven't downloaded it, go to COSI.org and definitely download it, or go to the Apple Store and download it there. All right. So that's the digital space. But then, as you guys said it, going to COSI, it's about hands-on interactive. We wanted to make sure we had a physical piece. So we came up with what we call the COSI Connects Learning Lunchbox, right? And what this is this box, and we have different themes. We have a water box, we have a nature box, and I'll talk about a third one we're launching just now, which I'm excited about. In this box has all kinds of great information, right? And what's really cool about these boxes compared to other science kits is everything comes with it. You don't have to go to Whole Foods or the pharmacy or Home Depot or Lowe's to get more stuff. Everything is in there to do 5 or more scientific experiments right there at your fingertips. All right. This is where you guys stepped in. Commissioner Grady, your colleagues Marilyn Brown and Kevin Boyce, as well as Ken Wilson, really stepped in here and said, we love what you're doing with these kits. We want to ensure that these kits get to all kids, but especially the underserved kids throughout Franklin County. And you were very generous. You supported us in this effort. And so we launched this official innovative partnership with you all. We talked about Feeding Hungry Lives and Feeding Hungry Minds. And the Feeding Hungry Lives came in partnership with Children's Hunger Alliance, who they were giving once a week free meals to underserved people. And we were supplying COSI Connects kits. And you can see a picture of a family here, just really excited with the kits they got. And what we did is we gave them away in a social distancing way at different community locations throughout Franklin County. We had different city officials helping out. The cars would pull up and we'd give you the kits. Just really exciting times. And just to tell you how popular it is, you're looking at St. Stephen's. This was shot with a drone camera from one of our team members. The line of cars went around the block to come and get these kits. And so again, you talked about, Commissioner Grady, in your opening remarks, you talked about having patience, vision, and trust. That is exactly what Franklin County had. That refers back to what Amy Taylor referenced, the Columbus way, really believing in our institutions that we could deliver something. And through the patience and vision and trust, we were able to have this incredible impact. And then the second digital physical implementation is what we call COSI on wheels. You guys remember these trucks that would drive all throughout the state, taking great programs to schools and to community centers. Well, we can't do that now because of the coronavirus pandemic, but we realized that we can convert those vehicles into what we call hotspots. And so now we go to these digital deserts. So a lot of people have handheld devices, have smart devices, but they lack that consistent Wi-Fi connectivity. So we travel to different places. We call it COSI on Wheels, Curbside Edition. We come to a neighborhood near you. You show up with your handheld device, and you can download all our stuff for free. And the best part is when you get home, whether you have Wi-Fi or not, the stuff remains on your device and you can access it. And the best part about this, and here's just some of our partners we work with in adjacent to the Franklin County, is all the material we have, or most of the material we have, is actually correlated to the Ohio Science Learning Standards. So if you're a kiddo or a parent or especially a teacher, you know that if you go to our website and leverage some of our material, it speaks specifically to what you need to be teaching that first grader, third grader, seventh grader, etc. And here's just another shot. Now this is our COSI Curbside Edition. This van you're seeing with the COSI Cheerios is actually a hotspot. So you come with your handheld device and download the information as well as getting a COSI Connects kit. And here's just some fun comments, some feedback from different people. I'll race through it because of time. Also, this is the Secretary of Energy who reports directly to the President of the United States, Dan Briette. He came here with some folks from Battelle and a few other folks from the Ohio Business Roundtable. We gave him a kit. He was so excited that we're now developing an energy kit. And something that I know, Commissioner Grady, you are super excited by is our relationship with NASA. This is the CEO of NASA, Jim Bridenstine. Our relationship with NASA through the Science Festival and through other things we've done have got them excited about supporting our next third latest kit. It's called the Space Kit, and it will look like this with a NASA logo on it. We will be debuting this Tuesday, Commissioner Grady and listeners, viewers, at St. Stephen's. So if you want to get a space-inspired, NASA signed-off, hands-on kit for free, come to St. Stephen's on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And then lastly, the other thing we did is we are now the national partner with Virgin Hyperloop. As you know, Virgin Hyperloop is a subsidiary of Virgin Galactic. Virgin Hyperloop is responsible for that next kind of institutional change in mobility with this Hyperloop system. We are going to be their national partner, and it was so exciting that if I can move this right here, you can see on the right, Richard Branson was also using social media, both Instagram and tweeting how excited he is with partnering with COSI. So again, Sir Richard Branson celebrating how cool Columbus is with one of his cultural institutions. And so with that, I'll unshare my screen, Commissioner Grady.
Well, thank you, Doc. That was fantastic. I'm glad you were able to share with us all that. And we are always excited about that stuff. I think my 12-year-old's going to be mad if I don't get some of this stuff downloaded for her before she gets home from school today. And especially thank you for sharing the stuff regarding NASA. That's really great stuff. I have one more question before I'm going to let you guys all do some closing remarks here. Sarah is asking if COSI, and this is particularly timely, if COSI has any Halloween activities planned for kids who aren't going to be able to trick or treat this year because of the pandemic.
Sarah, that's a great question. So, well, I can't give you the date. We're going to open soon, but not before Halloween. So we're trying to think about what could we do to push outside the building in a Halloween-inspired theme. So we're still working on it. We're not 100% sure we can deliver on it, but thanks to that question, we are definitely thinking about it and trying to see what we can do.
So we're getting close to the time where we're going to need to close up. So I want to give each of you just a few minutes to share with us any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show. Let's start with Amy.
Well, hopefully, having listened here, it makes sense that there's a strategy at place. That when we began the Scioto Mile, and that groundbreaking occurred in 2007. And when we started that, there was a bigger picture in mind. And from there, we went to the riverfront with Scioto Greenways. And from there, we went to Dorian Green and AM&H and COSI and the National Veterans Memorial. And now, we're going to be constructing 4 buildings, 7 streets, 2 parking garages, all and public utilities, all within a 7-acre site. And I think that's because there was a strategy in place and the time is right. And I'm just really proud and excited to be working on projects like this. It's so much easier to go to work when you love what you do and you believe in it. And it's a real privilege to get to work with all 3 of you, because that's what we get to do at CDDC.
General Ferriter?
Oh, wow. I just, Commissioner, thanks for creating the forum today. It's great to see all of my friends again. Just like everyone else out there who misses hanging out in the classroom with their best friends. The same is on all of us. I would just say, first of all, for everyone out there, everybody's working issues, so don't work them silently. If you need help, call somebody. Secondly, the people on this call will find a way to help you no matter what big or small your problems are. We're open, and we believe we're super strong, and we're connecting and impacting lives at the NVMM, as is Dr. Bertley at COSI. And 2021 is so exciting because we have discovered how to reach 4 million people and beyond, all of us, and we're going to bring that back to a hybrid format where we'll be bigger and stronger. And so we do a blood drive here every month, so check us out on our website, nationalvmm.org, and each pint of blood saves 3 lives or impacts 3 lives. And then check out our virtual rally points series and our Veterans Day. Sign up for our virtual run. You can run 1 miles, get a 5K t-shirt for Veterans Day. For Memorial Day, we had it in 34 different states. And most of all, if you can't tell, deliver energy to somebody. Go out there and make a difference. And with that, I'm the understated of the 2. Dr. Bertley is the energy bunny, so I will now defer to him as well.
Dr. Bertley.
Well, thank you, General Ferriter. The one thing I really want to underscore for you viewers and listeners is, and I'm a transplant. I like to say I'm not from Columbus, but I'm of Columbus. This is my home, and I couldn't be happier. And I stress that because everything that you see and hear about, that's phenomenal, and there's so much. I mean, you just go to the Columbus Foundation and look for their #1 rankings, and yes, there's CDDC. Yes, there's our county commissioners who were amazing with that conference they held 2 years ago. Yes, there's the vets and General Ferriter's leadership, COSI, but there's so many more. The most important thing that's symbolic about what made this peninsula happen, and Amy talked about the Columbus way, but I want to stress the L word. It's phenomenal leadership. You got Miss Amy Taylor and her colleague, Guy Worley, representing CDDC that worked tirelessly. You got General Ferriter. I mean, think about it. We have a general in our community that's running a museum. I mean, I may be the Energizer Bunny, but you're the man, General. And then we get phenomenal commissioners under the leadership of Commissioner Grady, but then there's 2 colleagues again. I said them before, Marilyn Brown and Kevin Boyce. And then, of course, Ken Wilson is phenomenal as well. And just the density of leadership in this community is unparalleled, outstanding. We had ASAE that crushed it. We have all these different things. And now we have the peninsula. I know you think I'm going to say this, Amy. I'm not. It's called the Peninsula. It's a phenomenal space that'll bring people together to really celebrate what's the best of this great city. Commissioner Grady?
Thank you, Dr. Bertley. Thank you, General Ferriter. Thank you, Amy Taylor. I appreciate you guys being with us today. I got to tell you, having grown up in this community, I moved here when I was literally just a baby, and I've been here throughout my life and watched Veterans Memorial, spent a lot of time going to concerts there, lots of different events there, and spent my youth going to COSI, taking my kids to COSI over the last many years. I mean, so these 2 institutions are part of the fabric of my life, and couldn't be more proud to be with you guys today for all of that. Amy and Guy have been great friends and great to work with over my time as a county commissioner and great partners. But it's interesting. My brother, who teaches school at Columbus School for Girls on East Broad Street, but lives on the west side and will most often drive straight across Broad Street to get to school, has been watching all the development that's going on the Scioto Peninsula. And every time I see him, he just raves and raves and raves about all the work that's going on. The building of the Veterans Memorial Museum, the development of Dorian Park, the Scioto Greenway project, and now this development that's going on. And he just is over the moon and just raves about the changes and what it's doing to the skyline and what it's doing to just enhance what we have here in Columbus, and is just unbelievably blown away, and can't believe that his little brother is a part of helping make that happen. And so it gives me great pleasure, and it's my honor to have you guys with me today, but also that the work that you guys are doing, that I get to be a small part of, makes my big brother proud of me. So thank you.
Right. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, that does. That helps out a lot. The family, whenever I get to, get to make him proud of me. So I appreciate you guys being with us here today. We need to wrap up. You can learn more about everything we talked about today by going to the National Veterans Memorial Museum website at nationalvmm.org, going to COSI.org, going to columbusddc.com, or you can also get them on the County Commissioner's website. Thanks so much to all of you for being with me today, and for everyone who's submitting their questions on Facebook, and certainly for those of you that were letting us know that you were with us today. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until next time, everybody out there, stay safe and healthy. And all of my guests, please stay safe and healthy. My guests today were Amy Taylor from the Columbus Downtown Development Corporation, Dr. Fred Bertley from COSI, and Lieutenant General Ferriter from the National Veterans Memorial Museum. I'm Franklin County Commissioner John O'Grady. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Thanks. Take care. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you.
You.